Okay, so just 2 weeks after visiting the Convex Expo at the Plaza in Las Vegas, I found out about the Commodore Retro Expo, which was going on August 24th through the 26th at the same hotel at the Plaza, CRX 2018. I was notified by Derek Morris on my YouTube channel. More on him in a moment. So as you make your way in to the hotel, this is the kind of a photo of the hotel from the outside. And then as you go into the expo area, you kind of enter up this escalator where there's a bingo hall. And then opposite that, there's this grand ballroom style hallway. And then off to the right is this door, and it enters into a room, and it looks empty. You're like, uh-oh, maybe there's nothing going on in here. And then boom, there's the CRX Expo. When I got there, it was about 5 o'clock on the 25th, and there were presentations occurring. And so I got the tail end of a couple of presentations. I did happen to see the entire presentation put on by Stephanie Allaire. She flew in from Canada specifically for this event to show off her prototype and to talk all about what she's working on. Essentially what she was working on, and let me kind of pull up the website. If you go to the CRX website and click news, right here is where it talks about it. She says, ever wish that Commodore continued with the original 8-bit architecture? Stephanie did, and she's doing something about it. The C256 Phoenix is a new computer being developed that follows the path that many thought Commodore should have taken, with a 16-bit 6502 compatible CPU, upgraded graphics, sound, and peripherals. Stephanie plans to debut the first working prototype at CRX. Come witness for yourself. Some real modern retro presentations are scheduled for Friday evening and Saturday and Sunday. So although it says here that she was going to debut a working prototype, we didn't actually get to see the prototype actually functioning, but she talked all about its design, and it was really interesting. She said she was inspired by the 8-Bit Guy's video, one of his videos where he talked about what he would like to have seen Commodore make, the ideal sort of Commodore computer. I guess he talked about that in one of his videos. And so, yeah, this presentation went on for about an hour or more, just over an hour, and then she took questions from the audience, and you can see her holding the prototype in her hand there. And I recorded a couple of short videos of her talking, just so you can get a taste. And these will be posted, the complete presentation is supposed to be posted on the CRX website.
Trying to do something. We came to the conclusion that writing stuff in BASIC was pretty slow, so we kind of forgot that. And then later on we I got myself into the hacking. So I started hacking games, and because my brother was bringing games, and okay, Stephanie, you want to hack them? So I was doing hacking jobs. So first, molding, so the 3D printed was the way to go. And my bit size is just only so big. And that's also the reason that drove me to not have a keyboard part of the project, because keyboards are expensive, and I would have needed like a big printer. So, and also it's small enough that most people with a 3D printer could probably print it. So that's the reason. So the user port is smaller. It's the same pinout, aside one pin that is coming from the 6526 that is not available in.
And flying in from Canada, she said English is her second language, so French is her primary language. But she did a great job, and she was showing off her architecture. She designed this whole computer from scratch, and from what she was talking about, she called it the C256 Phoenix, and she has a lot of plans that she was trying to build upon what was left over from the Commodore 128, what would have been envisioned for the next version of the Commodore 128, or what would have been the Commodore 256 had they continued and not gone bankrupt. And that's a photograph of her prototype from the backside view. That's a topside shot, and that's the front shot, and that's the case. And she spells Phoenix with an F. So going by memory for a couple of highlights or simple things I remember, she had re-envisioned the SID with a bunch more voices. I can't remember if it was 10 or 12 voices that she was talking about. The sprites on the unit is capable of handling, I think she said, 35 different sprites. And she doesn't have a basic interpreter, but she mentioned somebody was working on an interpreter for it. And the way I kind of understood was that when you turned this thing on, you would kind of have a flashing cursor and you would be able to do commands like load, run, stuff like that, or load, to load things in, and sys type commands, kind of like what you see in regular or normal Commodore computers. And it has the capability of it's modular, so things can be plugged in and plugged in and taken out. She has a website right here, 256phoenix.com, and where she kind of discusses and goes into a greater detail on this project. It's really interesting what she's working on. And then she's also planning on doing a crowdsource funding cycle next year, she was talking about. And right now she wasn't even sure on the price point. So that was a really interesting presentation and kind of one of the highlights of the entire show for me, at least the parts that I saw. Looking at the auditorium, I think some of these shots were taken in the earlier morning on Sunday. So there weren't a lot of people, but in the early morning, because the show starts at 8 a.m. But there is a lot of hardware over there set up, and there was a lot to look at. And if you got to talking to some of the people, there was a lot to that could be learned. And they have these little plaques here that have all kinds of information on the different hardware that they had set up. And it was really interesting. Kind of went around. I took a bunch of photographs. This was a 3D printed PET, Commodore PET computer. And that's just part of it. I think that's just the outer shell. And this is the PET with the chiclet, and it has the tape drive. And I had not really ever seen these before. I've heard of the PET, I've seen them, but I don't remember seeing the chiclet. And then there was this motherboard. Someone's working on some motherboard replacement type thing, and I got the pamphlet here, and I'll show that later. And then they had some tricked out or modded 1541 drives, and I thought those were kind of interesting. I don't know, I didn't get to talk to the people who made these or what these mods were for, but I thought they were interesting. These were the SX64s, these portable supposedly for the businessman. The one on the left, all this little black hole here, kind of looks like it's a hole, but it's really it's an LCD display. This thing's been totally modded. They took out the CRT. This one has the CRT, and that CRT extends back like 8 to 10 inches. And this one's modded with some different controls here, and I will show a video of that here.
Oh, so he set up a...
So my chip and stuff, I copied all my circuitry, and then I provide chips to these guys that want them, and so they produce this board. We got the board, so they actually buy the board, the guy in Germany. And there are also PCB files are available.
Yeah, okay.
So you still have the rotary dial for your
for your volts.
but everything else is all push button.
Yeah, which is really awesome.
So it's a dual button, the original and the new button.
Yeah. But that can sound better with that on there.
I think
Yeah.
it's 2 hours.
Yeah. And this is how I got a lot more volume on that. So it's pretty cool.
But it came along.
Yeah.
Nice.
Look at all this room, what are we going to do?
I know.
So right here, look at all that room was what he just said, and really is interesting. Just the LCD screen right there, and then they had a speaker mod right here, and that's why he was showing off how loud and clear it was.
You could calculate for a bigger one. He's going to triple both sides.
So I thought that was really interesting. And then over in the far corner, there was the Raffle Corner. All these items here were being raffled off, and you throw your ticket in the area you were interested in, and I threw a few tickets in the Amiga slot, and unfortunately I didn't win anything. But there was plenty of these to try out, and a few of these only had like one ticket in there, so if you really wanted to win something, you just throw it in the one that had the fewest tickets and your chances were a lot better. And one of the things were being raffled off were the retro game dev books by Derek Morris. And I think the people, one of the guys, when he won it, he ran up there just full sprint and picked his up, and that was cool. And so Derek Morris was there, and he was there when I got there. I didn't know who he was. Somebody pointed him out during their presentation, and so I was like, oh, that's Derek. So when Stephanie Allaire's presentation was almost complete, I kind of went over to him and was like, introduced myself, and we got to talk, and I think I talked his ear off. But it was really a pleasure meeting him, and I want to kind of remind people to go to his website over at retrogamedev.com, where you can pick up a copy of his book if you're interested in learning about programming, not just in BASIC, but on the assembly language, to really get down and get dirty with the assembly language. And then I noticed he has my book walkthrough video on there. And you can pick up this book on Amazon.com, and it's only $14.99, which is not a bad price. It's a small book, and then he's telling me that coming soon is his next book, which is a part 2 to that book. His next version, volume 2, is coming here. It says quarter 4 2018, and it's going to be, he said, roughly twice as thick. And then when I was just visiting this website, I noticed he's got an NES edition, which was going to be pretty interesting there. That would be interesting. Coming in quarter 3 of 2019. And then just going around the room, I took a bunch of photographs of the different plaques and things that they had up. And some of this stuff, like this Telstar arcade, I don't remember ever seeing it before. I thought it was really cool. And here's an old, looks like a Magnavox 2. Yeah, so there are all these plaques there, and they had a bunch of different things. Here's a Commodore 64 Mini, a really tricked out Commodore 64. It looks like it was spray painted. It has all these mods on it. And then it talks about it here, the Dream 64. This Amiga with an amazing treatment on the case. And the Dream 500 here. And this is kind of a shot from the back corner looking out. The room is huge. There's a lot going on there. On the far left, this guy right here, he was selling a couple of different things, including Jiffy DOS and these Zoom floppies. And what these are is you plug these into your PC, and it allows you to be able to plug in a Commodore 1541 drive into your PC. So that was interesting. I picked up a couple of these Jiffy DOS. He's selling those for $20, and that's his website. And let's take a look at his website. Over here, there's the Zoom floppy, and over on the left, you could pick up the Jiffy DOS, and here's a few of those things that were for sale at the website. And yeah, they had a bunch of things I had never seen, like the virtual reality headsets. And I didn't get to see that one demoed. This Magic Voice was interesting. And they even had a Ultimate 2, a 1541 Ultimate 2. And then I've never seen this. It's a Commodore phone, which here, if you read this, it says it was exclusive to Canada, which I had never seen. I thought that was really neat. And this Koala pad was interesting. Sajtron had it hooked up to, it looked like he had a thing where he had it hooked up to a Commodore computer, and he was doing some sounds with it. And I want to demonstrate that I took a short video of that. So that wasn't that cool. It was really interesting. And then the other thing he had set up was this whole thing where he would take a photograph of whoever was a willing victim, and then he would digitize it, put it into a print shop, and print it out on a modern laser printer. And I'll show you some of that in this little video clip here. Oh, you see it flashing now?
Yeah. And then sending the data little by little.
You said that takes 3 minutes too? Or a couple minutes? 2 minutes?
But when it starts printing, it shoots it like it catches up to 2018.
That's funny. I remember when I was a teenager, okay, going way back, I didn't have one. For the longest time, I didn't have I wanted a printer, a dot matrix printer so bad. And finally did end up getting one.
What kind did you have?
Probably an Okadata.
Okay.
An old, you know, and I mean, it was new back then, but to be able to print out when you write a program on your Commodore, be able to print it out or print,
so you can look
images.
at your errors and stuff.
Yeah, it was like, wow, this is so cool.
So there's something called ghosting. Watch when I move. See my
yeah.
trail? That's an effect nobody liked back then, but now it's like, now people like it. They're like, wow, it's so retro. So there's an actual tube in there. There's an analog tube. It's not a digital sensor, it's an analog tube. So that's why there's a trail, these trails behind. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So.
Yeah, now it's cool.
So now watch this. Actually, maybe I can turn it. Actually, no, you should look at this monitor. Now turn the video enhance the other way.
The image enhance?
Yeah. You'll see what it does. So that's how the camera actually looks. And notice I look older as you go more enhanced.
Yeah,
More,
I see.
Yeah.
Contrast. But guess what? The more you add, the more pixels it comes out. It looks better. Because I was testing it normally, and I'm like, oh, the detail's okay. And then I busted out with this. I'm like, wow, there's a lot more detail.
Wow.
So now look at this over here.
Video, RF and video.
Hold on. What's it set at right now?
Channel 3, channel 4.
Now watch this. This is something I've never seen. It adds some kind of voltage to it, and it gets really bright.
Yeah,
Oh, I
see a
see.
little hue.
Gets dark.
And then this adds noise or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how it works. Yeah, so this was used, I guess, in pirating days to enhance the copies, because there was some kind of protection back then. So this would make the copies better as like the original. So they, you know,
When you say copies of software, like copy
Video.
protected?
pirated VHS tapes.
Oh, the VHS tapes. Oh.
Because in the 80s there was a lot of movie clubs where you could rent videos, and they were all pirated.
Yeah, makes sense.
There was a lot of pirating going on.
Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
So they used to use these boxes. That's why they're all black. They're called black boxes. And they were just pirated stuff.
So that was really cool. And then let's take a look at his website. This is him, Sashtron. He says he's going to post, when he gets some time, he's going to post the pictures that he took and 8-bit digitized and printed on this website. So check it out. And then those little tickets, those cards that that he was handing out, which has his website address on it. And that was kind of the setup he had going. He had all this stuff hooked up just to do that. And then there was another modern printer on the right. He said the old printers don't really have, the ink is all dried up, even if you buy them a new old stock. And he had this device here, what he was calling the little black box. And then looking at the other items in the show here, or in the auditorium, going back to that was a top-down shot of the SX64. This booth here was this gentleman, he was selling all kinds of stuff right here, loose boxed copies of games, loose diskettes he was selling here for under $1 each for most of them. And then these power supplies here were 128 power supplies, and he was selling those for $10 a piece. So I picked one up for my to have a spare for my 128. And then finally I get to the kind of the tail end of my video is kind of some of the stuff that I picked up, including the pamphlets and things. Now this person here was selling, or is about to produce a book, and I'll put the link on there for the 128, for the Commodore 128 handbook. This was that pamphlet I was discussing. These are some stickers someone was selling on one of the corner booths. He wasn't there, so it was kind of on our honor system, and I think there were a couple dollars a sticker. And then, yeah, just some advertising and VR for the masses, not the classes. Here's a box copy of a game that I picked up. He offered me this and these next two items for all for $10. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I think it was this. It might have been 20. Can't remember now. But I was like, okay. And this is a Jiffy DOS that I picked up. One goes in your Commodore 64, the other goes in the 1541 drive. This is that card I was talking about from Sajtron in his URL. I picked up some loose copies of manuals, including this Wizardry manual, which has some, looks like some writing from a player who was taking a lot of good notes, which is, it's cool to see that. And he had mapped out some dungeons. And then just a couple of other random things I picked up, just the manuals, and he made a deal for me, I think for all of these and a couple of the controllers, another $20. I just picked up a few loose discs. There was a bunch in there to choose from, but I just picked up 2 or 3 or 4. And then this was a little mug. They were selling these mugs. They had different color ones, and they were selling those for $12. And I picked up this rollerball mouse. And that was the PSU for the 128. You can't beat that. $10. So that pretty much wraps up my experience at the CRX 2018. This was the Atariage link. And I thought it was very interesting. I didn't get to see all of the presenters here that are listed, but I got to see about 2 or 3 of them. And I think the problem I'm having with these sorts of expos, especially when they're really far away, is when they put some of the presentations on Sunday afternoon, in the late afternoon. That's usually the time I'm heading back home, but it was a pleasure going to it, and I met a lot of people, and I thought it was a blast. So, and it was definitely worth the time going and seeing what's really going on still going on in the Commodore community. So that was fun. Thanks for watching.